Welcome folks, my name is Chef John. What we're going to be talking about today is a really easy recipe for you to do, easy to put together, perfect that's going to pair with any fruity red wine or Zinfandel or Grenache, things like that. We're going to be doing some grilled country style ribs today. Now these are country style ribs. If you're not familiar with country style ribs, basically what it is it's just a cut of the pork shoulder. If you can't find these in the store or get them from your butcher, another great replacement is spare ribs or baby back ribs. It's just going to affect the cooking time a little bit, but just know that you can be flexible with the actual cut of rib that you're going to be using. Now what we're going to be doing with these today is basically making a quick spice rub. We're going to rub these ribs and let them sit for an hour or up to overnight. Then we're going to grill them off, finish them in the oven so it's very hands off. Now what we have here, folks, is we have a little bit of brown sugar. That's going to provide some flavor and color. We've got some kosher salt. We've got some chili powder. We've got cayenne pepper. Now this ingredient right here is optional. So if you're not pairing these ribs with wine, you can absolutely use however much cayenne pepper you like. I like it to be a little bit spicier, but honestly, when you're pairing with wines, if your wine is a young, fruity red wine, you can get away with using a little bit of cayenne pepper or a Zinfandel or things like that. If your wine has more tannin to it, you actually want to really scale this down or don't use it at all, because spice and tannin have a tendency to amplify each other. Finally, I've got a little bit of freshly cracked black pepper. We're going to mix all those ingredients together. We're going to rub it on the ribs, but let's show that how that works. So folks, basically what I'm going to do here, real simple, I'm going to mix all of these spice ingredients together in a little mortar and pestle that we have here. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, that's fine. You can do it in a bowl, maybe use a fork, because sometimes brown sugar has a tendency to clump up. You want to make sure and break up all those clumps so they'll spread evenly over your ribs. So what I'm going to do here, all I'm going to do is just dump all the ingredients right into the mortar and pestle. Like I said, I'm only going to do a teeny bit of cayenne pepper and the freshly cracked black pepper. Now I'm going to use our mortar here to mix all of these ingredients together until they're fully incorporated. And like I said, you really want to try to break up any clumps that you get so the spice rub really incorporates and spreads more evenly on your ribs. Now folks, what I like to do when I'm at home is actually make double or triple this recipe, because this is a great recipe to use on a lot of different types of things. You can use it on chicken, you can use it on pork, fish, steak. Very easy, great way to add tons of flavor to your recipe. All right, so now that I've got this all mixed together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our ribs here. I'm going to place them in a mixing bowl because I don't want all of our spice rub to fall off. So we want to keep it nice and mixed in there. So I'm going to dump all of our ribs in there. All right, so now we've got our ribs in the bowl. We've got our spice rub ready to go. What I'm going to do is I want to sprinkle a little bit of the spice rub right on top of the ribs. Then we're going to mix those up. And it's okay to use a good amount of spice on this recipe because these ribs are pretty thick, they're pretty meaty. You almost can't over-season them. Obviously you can, but you want to get a lot of flavor into this guy. So now that I mixed them up a little bit, I'm going to add a little bit more of the spice rub, mix some more, add a little bit more, mix some more. We want to get the ribs thoroughly coated with the spice rub. All right, so we've got our ribs all mixed up, nice and seasoned. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to put these in the refrigerator for about an hour, or you can go up to overnight. The longer that you let them sit with the spice rub, the more flavor that they're going to get on the inside of the meat. All right, so what I've done, folks, I've let these sit for at least an hour, like I said, or up to overnight, so they're nice and seasoned. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grill these off. Again, we're going to get some grill flavor, some grill color before we finish them in the oven. Very simple here. Again, you can use a grill like this if you have one, or you can use a charcoal grill or a gas grill. It's really up to you. We just want to get some color and flavor going here. So what I'm going to do, folks, is I've got all of our ribs. I've got a nice clean grill, nice and preheated. We're gonna lay them on the grill to get some color on there. All right, so folks, we've got these ribs going on the grill here. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're working with these ribs, not all country style ribs are exactly the same size. So that's gonna play in part to making sure that you know when they're done, but we'll test that with the digital thermometer. We wanna make sure to try to evenly cook all of these ribs. All right, so folks, as you see, these ribs are starting to pick up some good grill color, grill flavor. Partially what this process also does is really help to lock in that seasoning that you put on the ribs earlier. Gives it a really nice flavorful crust. So that's gonna really help to amp up a lot of the flavor. You can always just use salt and pepper if you want, but that spice rub is really gonna give you loads of flavor for just a few extra ingredients. So now that these have some grill color, some grill flavor, I'm going to transfer these to a sheet tray. It's important to use a sheet tray that's got a lip on it. Don't use a cookie sheet that has no lip, because when you stick these in the oven, the ribs are going to let some juice off, and if you don't have a lip, it's going to fall to the bottom of the oven and smoke up the whole house. Okay folks, so our ribs have been in the oven for a little while now. That's basically just to help fully cook them all the way through without having to constantly manage them on the grill. As you see here, they're beautiful. Look at that, folks. And that's all because of the rub. The rub really adds a lot of color and flavor to these guys. Now, I want to check and make sure that they're actually fully cooked. Now, folks, if you don't have one of these or something similar to it, this is what's called an instant read thermometer. It's perfect for meats or vegetables. This will tell you exactly whether your meat is ready or not. It's hard to tell without a thermometer. You know, you can cut it open, all that stuff. Really hard to tell, easy to overcook. Now, as you see here, folks, it says about 170 degrees. Now, I did recommend that you cook these all the way to 175 degrees, but here's another quick tip. We've had these in a very hot oven, so even though it says 170 degrees, it's still extremely hot on the outside of the ribs. So I'm gonna take these out. I'm gonna let them rest, throw a piece of foil over there just so they don't cool down. But if you notice, this temperature is actually gonna go up a few degrees as it's resting. That's what we call carryover cooking. Now, the recipe, like I said, recommends that you take it to about 175, 185. That's fine. With these ribs, they have a lot of intermuscular tissue, so they're not going to dry out that easily like a pork chop would. But basically what we want to do, they're just about done, but we want to glaze them with some of that barbecue sauce while they're in the oven, because I want that barbecue sauce to kind of bake on a little bit and again, make a more flavorful crust. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the ribs out, we're going to glaze them with a little bit of the barbecue sauce. We're going to put it back in the oven for about 5 minutes. Do that 2 more times so you get a nice, thick, glazy crust on there. Then we'll pull them out and let them rest until we're ready to slice them. Folks, next up what we're going to do while we've got the ribs cooking in the oven is we're going to put together a really simple, homemade, from scratch barbecue sauce. Now again, just like the barbecue seasoning rub, I actually like to do maybe 2 times or even 3 times this recipe, so you have some to use again in the future. This recipe, perfect with fresh fruity wines or Zinfandels or things like that, but let's walk you through how this is going to work. Alright, so folks, what we've got here, we've got some canned diced tomatoes. Now, if tomatoes are in season where you are or whenever you're looking at this recipe, feel free to use fresh tomatoes. That's your best idea. But if it's not tomato season, or if you just want something that's a little bit more convenient, feel free to use the canned diced tomatoes. Now also here we have some diced onions, fresh garlic, kosher salt, freshly cracked black pepper, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, white vinegar, a little bit of molasses, some fresh blackberries, and some fruity red wine. Now this is a great way to use up some red wine that you've had sitting on your counter for a little while. You just want something that's nice and fresh and fruity. You don't want a big, heavy tannic wine. So folks, while we're working on this recipe, one of the things that I wanted to take a second to show you is how to properly cut an onion. You see a lot of different ways on the internet how to cut onions. I wanted to show you something that's very easy, very safe, and very consistent. All right, so folks, as you can see here, what I've done is I've taken the top of the onion off, the bottom of the onion off, and then I've sliced it in half lengthwise. So you see this is 1/2 of the lengthwise onion. What I've done is I peeled it. I've also left a little bit of the core on there. That's gonna help keep the onion together while we're cutting it. Now, the main thing is you want a nice sharp knife. The most dangerous thing in a kitchen is a dull knife. So you want a very sharp knife for this. Now, with confidence, some people suggest that you push down really hard on the onion. That makes it very difficult to do what we're about to do. You want to keep a nice light grip on the top of the onion here. Now basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag my knife through it. Okay, if you have to do the scissor thing, that's more dangerous and it's harder to get consistent result. All I'm going to do is just drag my knife through the onion, drag it through again, and that's going to determine the size that we're looking for when we slice it. Next, what I'm going to do is slice through the onion. Now you want to visualize leaving a little bit of this core together because that's really going to help the onion stay together while we're slicing it. So I'm not slicing it all the way to the end of that. Now again, we're slicing through the onion at about the same width as the way that we sliced it before. And we're just dragging the knife out. You don't have to go in and then out, just drag the knife out. Just like that. Okay? Next, what we're going to do is just start slicing it again the same width that we were working with before. Okay folks, so now that we have all of our ingredients prepped for the barbecue sauce, this is where it gets really simple. All we're going to do is just dump all of our ingredients into this nice heavy sauce pot. We're going to bring it to a boil, reduce it to a simmer until you get the consistency that you want. Now, I like to make this a little bit thicker because I like a thick barbecue sauce, but if you just want it for a dipping sauce, you don't have to cook it as long. You can cook it as long as you want to get the consistency that you want. Alright, so as you see folks, a lot of the ingredients that we put into the barbecue sauce are starting to break down. Now personally, I don't mind if my barbecue sauce is a little chunky, but when this is done, if you want it smooth, feel free to put it into a food processor or a blender until you get the consistency that you want. Alright, so folks, as you see here, we've let the ribs rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, you heard me talking about carryover cooking. So basically all the heat from the oven is on the outside of the ribs, and on the inside you saw that it was just not quite there yet. So by letting it rest, all that outside heat from the oven circulates into the center of the ribs. So you really want to let those rest for a little bit before you slice into them, and that way all the juices don't come flying out onto your cutting board. Alright, so folks, now that these have rested, we're going to start slicing these up. Now, some country style ribs don't have bones in them, some do. These do, that's fine. For me, it adds a little bit more flavor, but if they don't have bones in them, it makes it a lot easier to slice. If they do have bones in them, it's going to be a little bit trickier to slice, but I'll walk you through that. It's fine. Alright folks, so this is the finished product, our grilled country style short ribs. Now, like I said before, these are going to pair beautifully with Grenache or Zinfandel or any other fruity red wine.